Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad that you're joining us again today. We're going to continue with Jeffrey Sharp, who is here from England, who has written a book called The Hidden Meaning of the Bible. And this book was written in conjunction, you could say, on the inner planes with Sathya Sai Baba, who had guided him directly and indirectly to understanding passages of the Bible and the language of the Bible, Old and New Testaments, in a rich, different way. You could say in a way that is more accurate than the conventional interpretations that have come down the pike and have virtually alienated people all over the planet from the true meanings that were really embedded and really in store for us for our own proper human awakening and flowering. As you know, on this show, we like to talk about consciousness, how to fulfill our highest human potential. And what we find as we look into this matter is that our highest human potential is actually a divine potential. So Jeffrey has done work, and we're so very glad to have him back on the show a second time, because his work really lays out for us a way in the Western tradition of how to attain our highest possibility as human beings. So I hope you enjoy this show. And I would like to give you a number now so that if you want more information about the book and his work, you can get it right away. So get out a pen and get this down. Jeffrey, what's the number, and give us the website if you would.
The number, if anybody would like to look into the book and look into more of the information that I can give you through the book, is 1-800-758-1664. And you can also access this right now if you access an internet site on the World Wide Web, which is World Wide Web heartsources.com. That's heartsources.com.
What an appropriate name. And just give the phone number one more time if you would.
Yeah, the phone number is 800-758-1664.
Excellent. And we'll give this at the end as well, and we'll flash it up on the screen. So, Jeffrey, welcome back to the show.
I'm glad to be back.
Good. Isn't it wonderful being in a better world?
It's just wonderful being.
It is,
in total. It really is.
In total.
Yes.
Absolutely true. Absolutely. Would you please just show us the book and tell us the little story of it being blessed by Baba?
Yeah, sure. I spent around about 6 months in total isolation almost in my apartment. It felt like Muhammad in the cave writing the Quran, and simply wrote down what I was told. At the same time, correlating that with a regular conventional copy of the King James's Bible, because I felt the need to allow people to see where this stuff had come from, where this stuff was actually encoded in the stories in the Bible as we more conventionally know them.
Yes, indeed.
So each chapter of the book, although it does not read grammatically correct, for the very reasons that it was passed down as an encodement, correlates directly with the same chapter in the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Now, originally the Bible, well, Hebrew didn't even have grammar as we know it today.
Which is exactly the reason it came down in a non-grammatical fashion.
Yes.
Yes.
Grammatical to relative to our grammar.
Relative to modern English.
Exactly. Now, so you brought this book then after having completed it in your cave to India, to Sai Baba's ashram.
I took it to Sai Baba because I felt the need for divine approval, both physically and non-physically, before this could go out to the world. Because many of the things revealed in this book, which are about self-empowerment, about realizing the level of attainment that Jesus attained 2,000 years ago, which is something that the church had depicted as in, Jesus is the one and only Son of God. Even though in other parts of the Bible it specifically says that we are all the children of God. And we are all the children of God. Yet to disrupt the church now, here and now, could possibly cause more trouble than it saved. And so I wanted to be sure that I had divine approval. in every
Indeed.
way, shape and form.
So the timing was right.
So the timing was
And
exactly
right.
right. And the consciousness of the world was right for moving on to the next level, the next phase, if you like.
Very responsible of you. Very
So,
appropriate.
I took this out to Baba. Baba came and blessed the book. He gave it full approval and subsequently indicated to me that I should come to America, as I did.
Get thee to America.
With no money for a ticket, I started ringing round, finding out the best price for a ticket, knowing fine well that I had no money for a ticket. And one particular travel agent said, "Oh, well, I'll see what I can do for you." And the next day phoned me back and said, "Well, I'm not going to get you a cheap ticket." So I replied, "Oh, okay, that's fine." At the same time, in the next breath, this particular travel agent said, "The reason I'm not going to get you a cheap ticket is I'm going to give you a ticket." This was yet another example of divine manifestation. God providing for your needs when you're doing God's work. So subsequently I came to the States and have spent much of the time since, over the last 3 months, talking to various groups, both Christian and non-Christian origin, within the Sai Baba movement, where they have centres all over the country where you can go and talk to people.
Yes.
And also to various other groups who have a wider outlook at the possibility of there being more than one specific path to God. And how the book actually works is, what I came to realise is that most people in modern times with modern English have forgotten the real meaning of the words they are using. And because of this forgetting of the real meaning, they're constantly using words that they do not any longer understand. And meanings of words had been handed down to me over the last 2 or 3 years prior to writing this book. And I'd come to realise that to the extent that people even tell the truth when they believe they're lying, because their words give them away. If you know,
the words betray them.
The words betray them. If they know truly what these words mean.
Sure. Could you give an example of that?
I could give you many, many examples of that. I'll give you an example of bearing false witness. Now, one of the commandments is thou shalt not bear false witness. So to give you an example, if some guy has a busy schedule at work and he wants a day off for a particular purpose and chooses to phone in and make out that he's sick in order to get the day off work. Because a commandment cannot be broken, at some point later this guy has laid out a day of sickness for himself.
Let me just reiterate that point. Any of the 10 commandments, Jeffrey is saying, cannot be broken, contrary to
Common
general belief.
Common belief is you can break these things.
And that you should not.
The true belief, even of the commandment thou shalt not kill, because we are an eternal soul, therefore you cannot kill, was actually referring to the issues in life. For example, if you live in the belief that you are annoyed by a particular person comes in your life and makes you angry, and you are annoyed to the point where you take a sword or a gun and kill this person, you may believe that you've managed to break one of these commandments. Where in actual fact, nobody ever makes us angry. We only allow ourselves to be angered by other people. So by removing this particular face from your world, you are not removing the issue that caused you to be angry in the first place. And sure enough, somebody else
will replace
that face and will make you angry in just the same way as you were made angry before. The reality being that you're not actually made angry, you simply allow yourself to be angered by something about this person's behavior.
So the issue at hand is, what is it that is angering oneself or allowing one to be angered?
What is it within my inner being that is allowing itself to be angered by this person's behavior?
Now, to resolve that issue, and then we'll go back to bearing false witness, just hopping down 1 or 2 of the commandments, is that, does that need to be known consciously, or can that also be resolved unconsciously?
Both. But ultimately, the more this particular issue is in your conscious awareness, the more chance you have to deal with it. If you bring something to the surface that possibly has been suppressed for 20 years,
Or 20 lifetimes.
Or 20 lifetimes, ultimately. You bring it to the surface. You allow that thing to come to the surface, that issue to come to the surface.
Yes.
And find out what the real root cause of your frustration is to do with this issue. And then look at it now as opposed to at the time it happened. To give you an example, it could be that mathematics makes you angry. Why would that be? It's simply mathematics. It's not even depicted as a person. It could be that when you were first learning mathematics as a child, your father came home.
And scolded you.
He'd just been fired from his job.
Mm-hmm.
He'd had the worst day in his life. While you were doing mathematics and had a glass of orange on the table, you accidentally knocked the orange from the table, and your father explodes. It's the last straw, and takes his anger out on you for the particular situation he finds himself in.
Sure.
This could have a traumatic effect on you as a child, which your conscious mind refuses to acknowledge, but subconsciously relates it to mathematics.
Purely by the law of association.
The law of association. So every time you go to try and do something mathematical and you're struggling with the particular problem, you throw it away and say, I can't do mathematics. That's just one example.
Because you've
millions.
evoked that emotional reaction, which then becomes a trigger every single time you run into
every time you associate.
Exactly.
Subconsciously.
So what then does it mean, thou shalt not kill, from that point of view?
Thou shalt not kill means thou shalt not kill the issue which is causing you a problem. You do not kill the issue, you bring the issue to the surface.
Oh, in other words, you shall not, in a sense it means you shall not suppress it.
Do not try to suppress it. Do not try to kill it from your conscious mind.
Got it, okay.
And then you can process it, and then you can move on. Once you've processed it and found out what the root cause of it is, and looking as an adult, if you could bring back that memory of the time possibly when your father hits you because of his own problems, and you as a little child saw your father as this great big giant of a god, and you can look at it again as an adult, then you can just release it.
That's right.
Forgiving your father, knowing what he was going through on that day, forgiving the situation, and move on.
You look at it as an adult.
And then the issue dissolves. You don't have to kill it, it simply dissolves of its own accord.
Exactly. And the killing really has to do with the suppressing, the killing it from consciousness.
The attempting to kill.
Right,
yes.
Before it is resolved, which is brought to neutral. So there's no energy on it.
That's
there's
exactly
no
right.
Charge on it. Okay, great.
So realigning the Ten Commandments.
Yes.
And realizing, of course, that I am God, you are God, we are all God. Ultimately, everybody is God. Mm-hmm. And when Moses came down from the mount and he said to God, well, what do I say to the people? Who do I tell them that you are? He said, tell them I am that I am. It's very simple. I am that I am. I am that I am. In other words, your true self. And God is found in the heart. We're told this many, many times by many religions. Mm-hmm. And heart breaks down into he art. Art being the oldie English word for is. He is. So who are you? Simply I am. He is. The true self. The being. Which is what we are supposed to be. Until you are true to your true self, you are bearing false witness. You're pretending to be something you're not. And so we have a society full of people pretending to be something they are not because they're frightened to be the odd one out.
So everyone rushes to conformity for fear of being outstanding.
For fear of standing out from the crowd.
Exactly.
When in reality,
if everyone were to be themselves, they would be outstanding.
Exactly. We are all unique beings.
Yeah.
We are all completely unique. We all have a message for the world by our actions, by our deeds, by our thoughts, by the things we speak. We've all got something to offer the world. Absolutely. Nobody is worthless. Ego is not just the thing that makes a guy's head too big to fit through the door. It is also the thing that makes us feel so small that we think we're worthless.
And godless.
And we have nothing to offer to the world. If we had nothing to offer to the world, the God being would not have put our mini-God being in this world in the first place.
That's right.
We are all here to learn, and at the same time, something about us is something other beings can learn from.
That's right. Would you go back, Jeffrey, please, to completing the image or the story about bearing false witness and the fellow who calls up and wants a day off and fakes it?
Yeah, the fellow who fakes his sickness in order to get a day off work, as opposed to being genuinely sick, creates a situation where sometime in his future, on his own time, because he's stolen effectively time from his employer by lying, when in fact if he'd have told the boss the absolute truth, the boss, although might not have been pleased about him taking a day off, almost certainly would have let him.
Yep.
If he knew it was an important enough reason for you to take a day off work. So he's lied, through the weakness of lying or bearing false witness, or trying to bear false witness because you cannot. You've created a day of sickness for yourself, possibly on a Sunday or a Saturday or a day when you were on holiday.
Well, what's interesting is that he said, "I am sick." So out of that phrase, he generates sickness.
He makes himself sick.
From the language, he's instructed a part of himself to become sick.
Because
it's another level of it.
The true self is I am that I am. And as soon as you attach a condition to that I am, you become it.
There you go. That's
now,
right.
You're told the second commandment to set no limits. It says, have no graven image of what I am, knowing that I am God. A graven image is a fixed image. It's written in stone. So if you say, I am worthless, you will become worthless. If you say, I am an artist, you will become an artist. Whatever condition you attach to I am, which may seem empowering in a small way, is actually disempowering. Because by having a fixed image of what you are, you're restricting yourself from all the other things that subconsciously you're also saying, I am not.
Absolutely.
Such as, I am not a mathematician, shall we say.
Yes.
And then we
want to go through to another one or two? And behind this, I just realized that if you would be kind enough to share with us the version of, the true version, if you will, I dare say, of the weak and weakness, and what that means for us, which really articulates our relationship both to time and to timelessness, both of which we need to become more familiar with.
Yeah, before the masses began to read and write, we were taught by this thing initially that was known as a dictionary, which is a written version of terminology.
Of the spoken word.
And the mythological story behind this is that the guy who made the first dictionary en masse ran out of letters for his press, and so developed many different ways to spell words. And so different aspects of words.
Oh, that's funny. I never heard that.
Which, for example, if we look at the word bow, the word bow can be spelled B-O-W or B-O-U-G-H. It could mean to bow to a superior. It could mean a bow and arrow. It could mean the bough of a tree. Ultimately, bow means the same. It means to bend, to turn towards. And yet this is described several different ways. So many people do not make the association. They say that a bow and arrow is actually a bow and arrow.
So we make,
when in fact it was the bending of the stick which makes the instrument.
So we make a distinction verbally that doesn't show up on the page.
Exactly.
So we can hear a difference, because this is the frustration many people have with English, that so many words mean the same thing and they're said the same and they're spelled the same or spelled differently. It's the rules, in a sense. There are more exceptions than there are rules.
And the bringing of this about has caused a situation where it is difficult for people to find out what a word really means.
Right.
What the root word of a word is.
Now I want to come back to an idea that you spoke of before, which has to do with that the ancient ones knew that at this time period, the predominant language in the world would be English, and therefore, whether the original languages of the Bible were Aramaic or Hebrew or some combination thereof, there would be a relationship to English in our present time. Is that so?
That's exactly so. We came from a telepathic race that had no need to verbalize what we were trying to describe.
Yes.
As this was lost, we developed verbal language, which became more and more widespread, separated into different languages. And yet at the end of time, which we're coming to now, many of us are having experiences where we are developing a degree of telepathy.
That's right.
In other words, we've come the full circle.
Yes.
And so we're actually now, at this point in English, at the nearest point, although at the other side of telepathy on the circle, to the original languages. And so the original languages were very one single pointed, where English is very spread out.
Diffused.
Yet they're the two ends, if it's possible to have two ends on the circle, that centers around telepathy. And every country in the world is spending time and money educating people to speak English, which doesn't necessarily mean they need to give up their mother tongue, but it's becoming the common universal language.
Yes.
These people knew that, and they also knew that the majority of the population at the time were not ripe or ready enough to be given these higher teachings. It would be too dangerous for somebody with evil intent to have this kind of knowledge.
Now, for the sake of time, because unfortunately, even though it doesn't really exist, it is on our clocks running out. And we're going to have you on again, because I've asked you to please walk us through the days of the week and the meaning of week and weakness. But actually at this moment, if you would, give us an idea of what makes your written work so explosive. In other words, if you could share with us perhaps the story of Noah and the true understanding of Noah, and perhaps the story of Adam and Eve in our last few minutes, so people can have a taste of what it's like to get to the underbelly of the meaning that these stories really have for us, and how they are a roadmap for our own attainment of consciousness.
Okay, Adam was a divine being. I'll handle that one before Noah because it appears before Noah in the Bible.
We'll move historically.
He, and I say metaphorically he, because he encompassed both he and she, is both man and woman within the same being.
Yep.
And he has a need to experience. If we look at the word experience, we see that X is separated, not anymore, and peer is to look. He separated himself into fragments in order to experience himself, the human essence of the God being, if you like. And in order to do that, he needed time. Time is Eva, which was depicted in the written Bible as a woman. So for Eva and Eva, because for every experience that we go through, we need time to experience it in the first place. Otherwise it becomes irrelevant. And through time came a serpent, which is depicted as a snake, and the serpent which breaks down, you break the words down and you get sir, something in command, pent, the five senses, or thinking. In other words, the command of the thinking came to Adam through time, which is Eva, and tempted him to take of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now the tree of knowledge of good and evil is all sensory ridden. Everything we think is good is because we find it enjoyable to the senses. Everything we think of as evil is because it is non-enjoyable to the senses. And so this perception, which previously did not exist, comes of good and evil. God, in fact, is both what we perceive as good and what we perceive as evil, because God is everything. God is what we perceive as God and what we perceive as devil, because God is everything. And this began the journey into the lower self, where we would perceive one experience as being better than another. And the whole of the rest of Genesis leading down to Noah and so on and so forth is the story of how we fell step by step. We had all this list of people of such and such a man begat such and such, begat such and such. And the meaning of these is all the steps that we fell, how we tumbled in the first place. And we had to do that to experience
from our original understanding.
From our original divinity, where there was no perception of good and evil. There was only isness. Just is.
Yep.
And eventually things got so bad perceptually that the isness was no longer good enough, and somebody got to the stage where he was no longer surprised at anything that happened. He turned to God and decided, nothing surprises me. He was Noah. He was not surprised. And Noah built an ark, or a thing of safety, with 7 levels. The 7 levels being related to the 7 major chakras in the body. And within these 7 levels, he took everything that was him, an aspect of everything that was him, the beasts, if you like. And there were clean beasts and unclean beasts. The clean beasts were taken in by 7s, on all 7 levels, and the unclean beasts were taken in 2 by 2, and kept on the lower 3 levels of the ark, in other words, below the heart. The heart must be firmly in control of them. At the top of his ark was a window, the crown chakra. And at the 6th level of his ark was a door which had to remain closed until the rains had finished.
The third eye.
The third eye, the mind's eye. Because when we turn to spirituality, the old life begins to be washed away, which seems a very difficult journey. It's almost like the total world is flooded. Everything is finished. And so you have to lock your being inside your inner self until it happens, and control the ego. And eventually the ego, or the mind's eye, or the door on the 6th level, sent out a symbol of peace which was depicted as a dove. The dove returns as it is. So he waits a little longer, which is a story I'm sure anybody on the spiritual path is familiar with. And it sends out another symbol of peace to the world. And this time it comes back with an olive branch. Now olives are to do with the ancestors, the ascended masters before us. And they sent back this olive. The word Olivia means of the ancestors. To say, now you are approved of, now you are clean, now you can move on into the higher self.
Into the higher realms.
And the rest of the story of Israel, Israel meaning to struggle, tells of each aspect of self and how we attain what we call the Jesus level. What we call being the Son of God. I and the Father are one. And how we can create our own miracles.
So in other words, Jeffrey, the Old Testament and the New, both, including the Old, is a story.
It's a continual
about
story.
How we can be empowered to attain our own Christhood.
Our own Christhood. And not just as a state of awareness, but as a state of being.
And beautiful. This is but a taste of more to come, and indeed more will be coming. So perhaps the next time you're in New York, would you come by on the show and pick up where we've left off?
I most certainly would.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I really, really support your work, and I'm fully behind your giving your message out to the world.
The truth speaks for itself.
God bless. This is Mitchell J. Rabin. Thanks so much for joining us. Give a call at 212-420-0800. Share your thoughts and feelings with me. I love hearing from you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.